I've actually never been in here before. Here we go, Transition Bicycle Company. So I've lived here in Bellingham for 6 years now, and I've still never actually ridden a Transition more than like in a parking lot, besides my dirt jumper. Today, that'll all change. Hello. Hey guys. I'm here to see, good, thanks. I'm here to see Lars.
Lars?
Yeah. Thanks. Never been in here. This is way fancy. Wow.
Yeah. Come a long way.
Wow. I'm Jeff.
John.
John, nice to meet you. What's up, Lars?
How's it going?
Good, pardon the vlogging.
Good to see you.
Looks like a medium, perfect.
Yes.
We're about the same height, I'm 5'8", so
Yeah.
sweet. Killer, thank you. So is it brand new?
It is.
Holy smokes, cool. I'll probably actually swap over like right away. My Industry 9 wheels, I'll probably do a Shimano drivetrain that I have kicking around, and then my P&W cockpit. So
Sweet.
yeah, the only parts I'll really ride are frame, fork, headset, and shock.
Sweet.
Thank you, appreciate it. Never ridden a full suspension Transition.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Stoked to hear what you think.
I'm sure it's gonna be great. I wouldn't ask to borrow one if I didn't have, high expectations or whatever.
Right. Sweet.
Thank you so much.
Enjoy, Jeff.
Thank you. See ya. If you're unfamiliar with the brand, Transition Bikes has been around about 20 years or so, and they were the first ones to really spill the beans that Bellingham is indeed the Squamish to Seattle. They've been super active in supporting our local advocacy group. Not only that, but they build and maintain several of the coolest trails in town. The Spire is a really big bike, and according to Transition, it combines downhill bike capability with mid-travel efficiency. Very big claims, yes, but it's not the biggest thing here. The biggest thing here is the wheelbase. At 1257 millimeters, this thing's even longer than the massive Mondraker Super Fox ER, even though the Transition only has a shorter 460 reach. The bike does have the slackest head tube angle I've personally ever ridden at 63 degrees, and it claims to do quite a bit. Does it live up to all this hype? Well, let's find out. Something like that.
Oh, sure.
Needing to get some seat time on the Spire, I decided to use it while filming a Patreon riding tutorial on how to land jumps. And lo and behold, was I ever surprised at how this thing feels on the jumps. It feels really, really comfortable. This right here is my first time through the big jump line set on the Spire. I have not been hitting many jumps this summer, but you know what? Right out of the box, I felt solid on the Spire, enough to just go for it on these things, and it handled them pretty darn well. This really had me stoked to hit some more jumps. Today is my first day aboard the Spire, and we're here on our local trails in town. Transition's a local bike company. They sponsor a bunch of the trails we rode today. How did it go? Well, it went really, really well. This bike's really capable, and I'm having a lot of fun on it. So right away, we warmed up with hitting some jump lines, including a Transition sponsored jump line. And immediately I felt comfortable hitting jumps on this thing. It felt super appropriate. Had enough progression, I wasn't bottoming out too easily. It was easy to get enough air with that same progression. Very controlled, it was stiff enough, I wasn't quite dialed in my landing. I didn't feel anything wonky going on. Very fitting, so that was my first run ever through this set of jumps on this bike. Transition actually sponsors, and does a lot of the actual shovel work, building and maintaining these jumps here. So this kind of makes sense. Holy moly, like I won't go so far as to say everything's perfect, I'm dialed in, but this thing is in its natural habitat right here. It felt so dialed, it felt so good. I'm like, any kind of reservations or nerves about riding a new bike, rapidly plummeting. This thing feels really good, especially on it just feels like it wants to jump. It really is mellow in the air and going off takeoffs and landings. So yeah, looking forward to more of these. The wheelbase is quite long, and when you're jumping, it ends up being nice. It ends up being very just confidence inspiring. I know it's a cliche term, but I felt like I could almost do no wrong on the jumps with this thing. This thing climbs pretty good. I wasn't expecting it to be this much of a regular old bike. The website actually says it's DH bike-like capabilities. I don't know if that's true or not, but holy cow. Way more than a downhill bike because it can go places. This is kind of what I've been really looking forward to for a while. Now I've only hit a whopping 2 or 3 trails so far. So very first initial seat of the pants, hitting corners and all that. Flatter trails, it is a little bit much for the flatter, mellower trails. But that all changes as soon as it gets steeper. Transition calls this a DH bike that can handle trails, and I think they are spot on with that reference. I do think it's kind of funny that I call myself like a trail rider, and I ride all these bikes with like a 160 fork in front, and then I get on a bike with a 170 fork, only 10 millimeters more, and I'm just like mind blown. Holy cow, we can do cool stuff with this bike that the other bikes would feel very nerve-wracking to just attempt. And you know, we have quite a bit more rear suspension, which I think factors into that. But honestly, more than all that, I think what really is factoring into that capability feel isn't the suspension, it's the length of the wheelbase. The back end of this bike is fairly long. I don't know off the top of my head, I think it was a 440 chainstay. Manualing this thing does take a little bit of effort. It pulls up into a wheelie pretty nice and easy. The reach measurement's not enormous. Once it's in the manual, it's a little bit harder to control than a shorter chainstay bike. So it's not a huge deal or anything. I'm still able to do some cool wheelies on it, but I've got to adapt to that. I've got to learn how to deal with that. For the brakes, we're running this Ram Code RSC. Lots of all you love the Code RSC and tell me I'll never have a squeaking brake again if I just switch over to SRAM. I still have a hard time making the switch because I'm so used to the Shimano brakes and I really, really like them. But anyhow, I'm just gonna give this a proper college try and then I will swap over to Shimano eventually. When we're getting through the wet routes, things are slippery right now, and the wheelbase really helps you recover if something does slip out. The suspension's soft enough up top that I don't feel like I'm over damped or oversprung for the amount of traction I don't have. And then deeper into the travel, it's pretty predictable. I'm running about 62 PSI in the Zeb. About 180-ish PSI in the rear shock. I'm 172 pounds. Size medium feels totally appropriate. Once I did notice that my leg got caught on the high seat when I was trying to do some maneuvering, and that's because I can't run a full 200 mils drop. I'm at like 170 drop right now, and I'm not used to that. I'm used to running proper 200. So the way the cable's routed, I can't quite fit 200 with my particular brand dropper seat rest. I can't wait to get this bike on more proper gnarly trails. I think some road trips are gonna be in order, and if no road trips, then I'm just gonna try the steeper, gnarlier trails on our local public mountain here. And yeah, I'm really looking forward to riding this thing some more. It's absolutely exceeded my greatest expectations for what a 170 bike can do on the mellower kind of trails that I normally end up riding. We go on and on about the latest, greatest, and best possible bikes, but we pretty easily forget a very important part of the whole performance package, and that's our body itself. The Spire's been super fun, but I haven't yet had a chance to put a water bottle cage in it, so I'm just carrying a single bottle in my hip pack. And that's working pretty good, and a big secret of why that single bottle is working is because I'm putting a little bit of electrolyte supplement in it to make it just a bit more effective. I've been partnering with the guys at LMNT, pronounced Element, for the last year or so, and they make a really simple electrolyte mix. It's just a little bit of potassium, magnesium, and sodium with a tiny bit of stevia. I found that when you've only got a limited amount of water, you can get a lot more bang for your buck by using some electrolytes. As you're sweating, even I've had some of the best possible winter gear on now, and I'm still sweating buckets because it's not quite pouring rain. As I get a little bit just dehydrated, having a hard time focus and losing some mental clarity, the Element stuff really helps keep me on track, and I get the most possible for performance out of me to do this bike some bit of justice. I hope, I can only hope. For a limited time, Element's been kind enough to offer viewers on my channel a free sample pack with any purchase from their website. And to take advantage of that, I've got a link in the description below. It goes over to drinklmnt.com/Jeff. This is a limited time offer, so if you guys are thinking about some supplements, give it a shot. I'm a big fan of this. I'm using a spicy flavor today to combat the brisk fall air. All right, thanks to Element, thanks to all of you. Let's get on the single track.
Oh no, he dropped his pine cone.
Got a fun, flowy little trail up here. I'm gonna try it out on the Spire. Adjust the glasses. Futz with everything. While we're often pretty enthralled with things on the initial test drive, how do they actually hold up when you turn them into a daily driver? As more of a trail rider, I've kind of been wondering how this larger, almost free ride-esque bike would feel on trails that I ride pretty regularly. I often do ride shorter travel bikes. Will I suddenly be bored to tears with more suspension, more wheelbase? Well, let's find out. Ew! This thing jumps good. It takes a yoink, but it comes right off the ground. I'll go more in depth on manuals later, but I can say one thing for certain. Nice, this bike balance is good. This bike definitely loves to be ridden fast, and here and there, I found myself going quite a bit faster than I go on other bikes, to the point that I was kind of worried about my own well-being should I make a mistake and smoke a tree on accident. Riding bikes that aren't quite as fast have the side effect of feeling safer because when you do make a mistake, there's a little less consequence attached. Context for that statement's pretty important too. If you ride trails that are steep enough that you're often modulating your brakes to keep from going too fast and ending up in the woods, then a bike like this can be an absolute hoot. When the trails aren't as steep and gnarly, well, that's a different discussion. We'll move on to that in just a moment.
Oh man, conditions are ripping. Kung. I haven't jumped that in a while.
So I've got a couple of rides in on the Spire, and I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna go ahead and swap this thing over to my favorite stash of parts. It'll make it more like the bikes I'm used to riding, and more importantly, I'll be able to do lots more wheelies. So without further ado, I'm gonna swap off the brakes and the drivetrain to my usual stuff. Brakes are on, got a shifter, got a derailleur. It's getting late, I'm gonna go to bed, crack at this thing first thing in the morning. It'll probably still be dark out, so just like this,
So I just made it across the border. I'm heading up north to do a little riding on this here Spire. It actually snowed this morning back home in Bellingham. And I wanted to give this Transition Spire a proper shakedown, somewhere totally new. Although I have ridden this spot once before, like 6 years ago, so I did just exaggerate, it's not totally new. But hey, it's a little bit of an adventure. Anything I like, it's a little bit of an adventure, so.
Trying to do my due diligence as a bike tester, I took the liberty of traveling internationally with the Spire across one of the longest international borders in the world. Once I got north, there was plenty of white stuff on the trail. And it was fun riding the Spire on some tighter, more natural trails. It was a lot of fun, and I kind of think I'm gonna post that whole video separately from this. Getting up the tighter climbs, yes, the bike can certainly do it, but again, it's gonna take a lot of energy, and once you get tired, it is then kind of a chore to get up the really tight stuff, but on like access roads and stuff, the Spire pedals really well.
Look at that yummy light.
With conditions relatively frozen and snowy, I wasn't really able to push things all that hard on the downhill, so the Spire it felt safe and, appropriate. And here and there, it was downright fun, and here and there, I was, honestly a little bit overbiked, and that's okay. You take your choices and succeed where you're gonna succeed, and sometimes you do swing and miss. That's okay.
My favorite move of all time, the bump jump. This bike's pretty good at them. I like the FSR style. I know they've got a different acronym, but 4-bar horse link. The Spire is a big bike. These trails had sections where the Spire was totally the right tool for the job, and then it did have sections where this was more than I really needed. That's always the juggle. If you want, I think like as Transition says, downhill bike, you can comfortably ride to the top. That's pretty true. Man, it's not even really a speck of mud on the bike. So right now I'm checking to see how much snow is gonna be up here on the North Shore. We can see some mountain bike tracks heading in there. Can't really tell how much crunchy white is under the trees though.
Bean around the world. Locally roasted world coffees. Thanks guys. About 26 degrees when I woke up, and it's probably around 30 degrees right now. It's gonna be very frozen and cold up there, so we'll try out the trails you're watching over. Oh boy.
I know this bike is marketed as an enduro bike / almost downhill bike. To me, that essentially means free ride. And to me, free ride is still the old school North Shore. So I took this bike to one of the most classic trails on the Vancouver North Shore.
Yeah, no better place to be. Exactly.
Having a long wheelbase on this stuff can be a chore when things do get really tight, but then at other times when you're dropping off of things with minimal speed, that long wheelbase can really save your teeth. I have no idea if there's usually this many hikers on the trail, but I thought it was interesting that these guys were on a mountain bike classic in a big group, totally surprised that someone was riding a bike down. Maybe some education needs to happen here. I don't know the answers.
Hey pup, hi, hi.
Are you by yourself?
Yeah, there's probably gonna be more people. I see a lot of tire marks. Hello. How are you guys doing? Sketchy to be walking today with all the ice. Hello. I don't know if I can do this, but I might look at it. Ooh, off camber, iced over. There's not an audience either. Have a good day, guys. There we go. Well, that was fun. I got some errands to run. While I'm doing that, how about you hit that red subscribe button below? I'll see you guys further along.
After a couple weeks of riding this thing, I've noticed that when it comes to pedaling efficiency, it's not bad. At the same time, it's also not amazing. If you're pedaling over bumps and stuff, you're gonna be fine, but it does kind of dive down into the travel a little bit more than something with a firmer platform on top. Is this a good thing or a bad thing? It kind of depends on what your needs really are at the time. When it comes to pedaling up long access roads, like basically shuttle roads or whatnot, the Spire works fantastic. In those instances, the rear suspension's not being bumped by a whole lot of things and you're just basically pedaling along, works great. The steeper seat tube angle, I'm not a huge fan of steep seat angles when it comes to technical climbing. I'd rather things relax a little bit to the mid, like 75 to 77 degree range, whereas this bike's closer to a 79 seat tube angle. I'll do a whole separate video about seat tube angles. Now, when it comes to descending, the elephant in the room, is this bike too big? Well, it's a fast bike. It's a very capable bike. And some of my favorite trails, well, it makes a little bit less favorite because I find myself needing to go faster to get sketchier. Is that good? Is that bad? It depends what your desires are. One thing I do really like about the Spire is it's easy to ride precisely, which is not something that's common with long wheelbase bikes. I have a pretty easy time figuring out where each wheel is, and the way the suspension feels, it's so intuitive that you can tell if you're landing or casing or doing whatever. There's no guesswork involved, and if you do need to make some micro corrections, the bike will not punish you. I think that's a combination of the reasonable reach measurement, that 460 is not absolutely huge. The long wheelbase, yeah, it's big or whatever, but that slack head tube angle is also pretty forgiving. Now, I'm only sharing this review from my own perspective, and I mostly talk about riding when I'm standing up, because when I'm standing up, I'm getting aggressive and having a good time. Seated riding, I don't know, I try to avoid that. I live in a place with mountains where you can actually stand up for significant descending at one point in time. If you have to ride seated a lot, a bike like this is probably not going to be your cup of tea. It's not designed for that kind of riding in the first place. But when you're standing, that slack 63 head angle, it feels great and handles intuitively. I'm a fan. With a longer end, the Spire does take a lot of energy to pull up the front wheel. Is it impossible? No, it's still much easier than the e-bikes I've been riding lately. Now that said, it does take a lot more to get the front end up than on some of the smaller bikes I've ridden. This is fine. Once you're getting tired, you do start to notice it. Similarly, on the steeper climbs, once you start getting tired on those climbs and you can't quite finesse the long wheelbase as much, that's when the bike's gonna be a bit more of a chore to get up the hill. Now, how many folks are gonna go up climbing trails rather than access roads with a bike like this? I don't know. You can totally do both. One of my favorite things about trying different bikes is each one teaches you something different about how to mountain bike. With the Spire, it's a good refresher that just smashing through things is okay. It's also a good refresher that it's okay to go fast and hit big jumps. In fact, I made it back to those same jumps again here after a couple of weeks on the bike.
Not much visibility here with the goggles.
On an unrelated note, I think I cracked the code on how to get this new GoPro to work, so stay tuned for yet another new video going all over what to do and not to do with the latest update from GoPro.
Real hard to see.
Transition also supports the biggest jumps in town here, and I haven't hit these things since earlier on in the summer. After the Red Bull event, there's a nice little roll in, and on the Spire, you know what? Dirt was firm, so I went for it, and right away, my first attempt through.
I feel like that's gonna be fine. Now I'm gonna hit the first hip jump of the big set. I'm just gonna try to make it across and see how that feels.
Now that summer is fully over and the mountain bike parks are all closed, of course, due to Murphy's Law, I'm gonna have the Spire here at my disposal. This bike would be so good at Whistler Bike Park, for instance, where there's some big, massive crabapple hits to try hucking. These jumps are our local answer to the crabapple hits. They're not quite as big, but they're not that far off either.
Gotta work a little to get that third one. We're gonna try to get good backside, good pump. That's kind of a long and low. Well, made it. It wasn't beautiful, but made it. I don't have a dirt bike right now, and this is a good substitute.
Is the Spire a bike for everyone? Honestly, kinda no. It's a bike for really advanced riders that are hitting pretty gnarly terrain. If you want to take it on less aggressive stuff, yes, you can totally do it. You'll be able to get down it, but you're not gonna feel like you're doing as much because the bike's gonna absorb a lot of rider input into the trail. That's fine because it's so good in the steeper, gnarlier bits that that's okay. I would really like to try out the smaller travel bikes like the Sentinel, maybe even the Patrol with the mullet setup, and see how those compare to the Spire. I'm also not done riding the Spire. I really want to take this thing to a few more spots and to, probably even shoot a few more videos with it. I've got a lot of respect for the crew at Transition. They've pushed a lot of cool things into the mainstream. They're also a bunch of good dudes that not only live for the sport, but they support it with lots of work towards trail building and actual advocacy support. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Sorry it went a little bit long. Please do hit the red subscribe button. Let me know in the comments down below, what was I totally wrong about with the Spire? With the number of opinions mountain bikers have, I'm sure there are lots of things there. All right, guys, with that said, I need to sign off for the night, so I'll see you all in the next video.